This will be one of my favorite segments of the whole program. One, because it's a great topic with fabulous people, but as a practical matter, we have a great friend and longtime Twinian, Chris Gebhardt, who's a master storyteller, was at Participant Media for years, now has Stir Strategy, and he's going to run the whole thing, so I don't have to do anything, which is great, which is absolutely fantastic. So I will, in a moment, turn the floor over to Chris Gebhardt. But before we do that, 2 points. Use social media. I know that it's difficult here because we intentionally in this space do not have social media, so it's hard to look down at your phone. That's a good thing, by the way. But you can do it in the lounge. And Alana Sandel, where is Alana? There she is. Her group, Marketing for Wellness, is supporting us in our social media efforts. So please, if you have any ideas for stuff to stir things up, any fake news you'd like to share for us, give it to Alana. So with this, I would like to cue a video first, and then my good friend Chris Gebhardt will join the stage to carry you through the rest of the evening.
We were hunters and foragers. The frontier was everywhere. We were bounded only by the earth and the ocean and the sky. The open road still softly calls. Our little terraqueous globe is the madhouse of those 100,000 millions of worlds. We who cannot even put our own planetary home in order, riven with rivalries and hatreds, are we to venture out into space? By the time we're ready to settle even the nearest other planetary systems, we will have changed. The simple passage of so many generations will have changed us. Necessity will have changed us. We're an adaptable species. It will not be we who reach Alpha Centauri and the other nearby stars. It will be a species very like us, but with more of our strengths and fewer of our weaknesses. More confident, far-seeing, capable, and prudent. For all our failings, despite our limitations and fallibilities, we humans are capable of greatness. What new wonders undreamt of in our time will we have wrought in another generation and another? How far will our nomadic species have wandered by the end of the next century and the next millennium? Our remote descendants, safely arrayed on many worlds through the solar system and beyond, will be unified by their common heritage, by their regard for their home planet, and by the knowledge that whatever other life may be, the only humans in all the universe come from Earth. They will gaze up and strain to find the blue dot in their skies. They will marvel at how vulnerable the repository of all our potential once was, how perilous our infancy, how humble our beginnings, how many rivers we had to cross before we found our way.
Thank you, Rob. New friends. So That was an amazing little video that friend Reed Gower and Michael Morantz put together about 7 years ago and threw up on YouTube, and it's gotten about 100 million views. And I love that video because, and I think the theme from this afternoon, this idea of remembering the future, no better embodiment than Carl Sagan in remembering the future, and what that was all about. This idea of storytelling that permeates through this gathering every year is really powerful and is such a lure to me because it's what's found me and what I've organized my life around now. And I really appreciate Rob giving me the opportunity to participate and to do this, and to meet some great new friends, to have a discussion around practitioners who are using storytelling in new and different ways. Moran and Patricia said some amazing things setting up this discussion. I can't tell you how much I love the book Sapiens. I talked about it the first time I spoke at Kin 4 years ago in Miami. I did a little book report, and Sapiens was front and center with that. And what she pointed out is exactly what moved me in that book as well, this idea that as humans, we are desperate to connect, and we connect through stories. It's the thing that's made all the difference in the world to us in both good and bad ways. And I thought it was really funny, if anybody was, those who were here last year, when Moran talked about processing visual images in the back of the brain, and then the messages get spread out to the rest of you. He put you in quotation marks because you is a construct. You is something that's shaped by the stories. At Participant, we really believed this idea that stories change the world because they change how we see the world. And Moran has actually proven that. They change how we process the world. And that's a really powerful idea that can be used for good. So the folks that we've got gathered up here with us today are going to talk about how they use storytelling in different ways, professionally, and to have impact. And it's going to be really exciting. It's an interesting spread of ways of using storytelling to create experiences and to drive change. And I'm going to introduce Chris Wink first, from Area 15, and also formerly a Blue Man Group. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and take the con here and tell a little bit about what storytelling means to you, how you've come to be a great storyteller, and how you're using it now to create entirely new experiences.
Well, I'm not sure I'm a great storyteller yet, but I'm working on that. And yeah, I think the reason I'm here is because of Area 15, really, because with Blue Man Group, we created a story world. There wasn't really a narrative. There was a narrative in our minds, but the story kind of unfolded in real time. And I think of it as story worlding as opposed to storytelling. But it was a great experience in terms of engaging the audience and having a kind of co-creation with them. I think at our show there, I think our goal was to have the audience write at least a third of the narrative. We would do these things. What was that all about? And now that's become very common. You go to Sleep No More, they say it's based on Macbeth, and is it Macbeth or something else? But you go through and it's like everyone has a different version of the story, and I'm very excited by that, about the audience participating in the narrative. Quantum narratives. You're going to talk about that a little later. I'd like to think of mycelium narratives, where you can kind of go down branches. But so at Area 15, my job is to create a sort of fictional backstory for this space that will help unify, hopefully, all these experiences. It's kind of a mall for experiences. It's part of the experience economy, I guess is the term being thrown around. But no one knows what that is, really. And we don't know if this is a behavior we can get people to take on. I mean, we know they'll go to a lame mall and walk around and maybe shop a little. And I've never really understood malls. I've never been to one that I liked. So I don't even want to be reinventing the mall. But I don't know another word for a common space that's free to go to. And from there, you can go into different shops. So one of our anchor tenants is going to be Meow Wolf from Santa Fe. You may have heard of them. They're amazing and done a lot of really great work in this space of sort of creating a fantastical world that you can roam around in. And so we're going to have that. I'm going to have a little space up at the second floor. There's going to be axe throwing. There's going to be augmented reality, virtual reality, and hopefully some other things like Meow Wolf, and maybe even some stores. But if there's a store, they have to have some way that they're incorporated into our narrative. So we're trying to play with this idea of basically creating a story world that you go to, as opposed to a shopping mall. It's a story mall. And you may or may not, follow the exact narrative that I've written, but we would create an evocative space that would encourage people to sort of walk around like being at Sleep No More, one of those kinds of experiences, and really kind of create a narrative for themselves. And hopefully one that isn't just an Instagrammable moment series. Because I'm interested in, I don't think we have to change the world in a big way, but I want a transformative experience or some kind of soulful depth to it. When we were doing Blue Man Group, it wasn't that we were saying, here's what we want you to think, but there was a feeling underneath it. We were wanting to connect to the primal and ancient as we were going forward. I think we were part of that time when Burning Man came around, a lot of other things that were sort of modern, primitive juxtaposition that was like, all right, technology's fine, but like, what do we bring with us? What do we want to not forget to bring? So I want to bring some of that primal quality, and I think storytelling does that too. What are these ancient fireplace stories that, and why do we tell them? It's not just for entertainment. There's a reason. Ancients understood when that story was told. It wasn't just imparting historic information. It was imparting wisdom and ways to live life. And we knew that there were myths and mythopoeic, poetry that we were meant to sort of glean wisdom from. And so I'm excited about that, but I'm also concerned because it's a strange time as well as an exciting time, because I used to know exactly what the rules were. On a Friday night, you'd come to our theater in New York, and we would be on stage. We'd be in blue. The audience would come in, and they would understand the rules. You had just left the real world, and you were you're going through the looking glass, spending 90 minutes, if not in Wonderland, looking through the glass into Wonderland. Our job was to go into Wonderland, a little longer than you, figure out a couple things, bring them right up to the mirror, and say, look at this. Real world, Wonderland. We now live in a world where we don't know which side of the mirror we're on. And I think what happened is some of the creatures in Wonderland snuck out. And then they dissolved the mirror with acid, not the good kind. In the old days, when I would go in, and the Red Queen would say, off with her head, you go, ooh, it's getting a little crazy, but I'm in a fictional place. What's going to happen if it gets even really crazy? You just leave, go back through. Okay, whew, that was too much, but here, okay, I'm back. Now the Red Queen is president. And when the Red Queen says off with her head, there are people that have to do it. And there's no place to go because they got rid of the mirror. And I can't wake up from this. So that's the world we live in now. So I don't know what the rules are, people. I can't say to you, my kids that are 3 or 4 are growing into a world where there is no clarity between the real world and the non-real world, between truth and, fake news. And there's no...
In theater.
In 10 years, there will be no distinction between reality and augmented reality. They're going to maybe laugh at us for even caring. They're like, well, who cares? But they might need some storytellers to help, because we're used to being in a semantic, crazy world where scale changes and truth goes all over the place. But we were used to it being there, not here. So I do wonder how we're going to use narrative like that. I do think that it has the power to connect, to integrate, to transform. And I know Richard's doing some great work in that area. So I think that might be a good segue.
Perfect segue. Richard Geer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Tell them about the amazing work that you're doing using theater to bring people together and bridge those divides.
Well, narrative, we all know story's important, right? But I actually think there's something before story that may even be more important. See if I'm doing this right. Yeah. Take a moment to look at this picture. It's possible you've never seen a picture like that before. Oh, maybe if you shot a crowd scene on a street, You might say, okay, I see that kind of variety and diversity out there on the street, but there's something else going on here, even though this is a frozen moment. Those people are all doing something together, aren't they? They're all in the midst of something. As a matter of fact, they're a little town. And the little town happens to be singing a song, and let's see if the song goes, this town never gives up, this town with a story never gives up at all. It's not simply chance. Our dreams pack a wallop, 'cause this town never gives up. So what you're seeing is the people of a community, who are all not only doing a story, the play was woven out of their stories, but in addition, they are beginning to move and to sing together. And when that happens, that becomes a unitive experience, and very quickly it tips over into the sacred. Why is this important? Because endemic loneliness doesn't stand a chance when you're loved in a circle of people like this. Active shooters can't happen in a community like this. And on and on. And you know what's the thing that broke my heart? You all know this community. The funding for this wasn't able to continue. But this is the community of Sanford, Florida. And you all know Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, but they're not in the cast. This is a fractal that can grow, and it's the oldest technology anybody will talk about all weekend or all week. The technology that happens when we stand inside of each other's stories. But it's only a beginning. It easily can break over into the sacred, as I said, and begins to define a community. It's a definitional ceremony. This one's been going on as the Folk Life Play of Georgia for nearly 30 years in a little place called Colquitt. But since 2008, communities don't have the money to be able to do quite as much as they used to, so now we spend more of our time working in workshops. But the same thing happens. In a single day, we make a play together out of the stories of the group, and they begin to seed, but only begin. Story by itself, as I know it, isn't the answer, even when it has moments like this in it that seem like the archetype of everything that belongs in our life and is missing. What we found is that stories seed the change that's possible in the community, especially when we follow it up with something like open space technology, and the community begins, energized by the stories that have brought them together, they begin to figure out, how can we go forward to here? How can we future think? And you know the way you future think? Somebody already figured it out in the past. And in that story is the way forward. And what's doubly powerful about it is that if that story happened in the past but points to the future, you doubly believe in it because my people did it right here. Another thing happens. This is the last thought that I'll leave you with. This is an illustration from our book, Storybridge. See, on the left-hand side of this is this story that people are enacting. That's a stage that they're working on. It's curved because it's handicapped accessible. But what happens as they tell the story on the stage, intentionally or even unintentionally, the community begins to reflect that in how it is and how it does what it does. So that's my piece of the narrative.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's on a community by community basis, an amazingly transformative way to use storytelling. Michael Shaun Conaway and Alex Melnyk from Storyworks in Colorado, an agency in Colorado, do amazing work with storytelling, both in a commercial kind of advertising context, but also in a filmmaking context. And I interpret what you're doing is taking that you're doing on a community level and blowing it up to a global level and attempting to do that. So would love to hear what you guys are doing.
Yeah, great. So first of all, really honored to be here. This is our first year at Twin Global. Really have been moved to the things we've heard today. I think what we're going to talk about is kind of weaves in together some of the stories we've heard today already. This notion of where does story fit in our life, and more importantly, how does it transform us in large and small ways. We are just finishing a project that will be premiering at Aspen Film Festival on the 27th called WeRiseUp. And tonight, I'm just really quickly, Alex and I are going to use a little piece of the film to talk a little bit about how filmmakers see story, search for story, and then use story to make things happen for you, the audience. We Rise Up is a film that tackles what does it mean to have a meaningful life? What does it mean to have a meaningful and purposeful human civilization? It tackles it as an inquiry. And in tackling as an inquiry, we have to reconsider what is important and what is meaningful for human beings. This is really important in this time when things are really in a large state of transition. With some global existential challenges and political challenges, it's really time for us to examine where do we show up in the world. We're gonna break something down for you in a minute. The film breaks into kind of three large domains. What is personal success, what is collective success, and what is universal success. And in the personal success domain, what we discovered is that we have a success model right now that's not viable and it's broken. If you're successful today, which usually means that I've gotten a lot of material goods and wealth, maybe wealth that I can even hand down to future generations, the acquisition of that doesn't leave you fulfilled and happy. Other things might, but the actual acquisition itself is not automatically going to give you fulfillment. And that kind of consumption, if you accelerate times the whole world, would take about 8 Earths to actually satisfy the consumption demand. So we looked at what would be a good model to replace the consumption model with, and it seems to us that contribution is a far better way to measure success. Alex, tell us how we actually get to contribution.
Well, there's probably many ways to figure out what you might want to contribute to the world. And I think one of the things that we discovered in filming, when we filmed about 150 people and asked those questions, what we really got to see was what lit people up. What was the thing that made them happy and joyful? And then we saw a completely different aspect of that as well. And it was the thing that people got most angered and upset about, and what was that thing that just hurt them so much that they had to do something about it. And that really, I think there are kind of two ways that you can access.
So I can access purpose or my purpose, or why I'm here, what I'm going to contribute, by either what makes me light up and be joyful, right? Or what makes me sorrowful or sad, or I can't get away from it. So you guys got it? So we probably don't need to see the movie now, right? We're just giving you the information of the first chapter. Strange thing about that, without a story, that information's not personal to you. So Alex, tell us how we're going to make that point, and I think it's the second one, what is unbearable to you that we're going to make a point of. Tell us a little bit about this clip we're going to watch.
We're going to show you a clip of Miki Agrawal, and she is the founder of 3 companies. One is Thinks, the other one is Tushy, and the last one is Wild, which is a restaurant.
And Miki's a social entrepreneur, which means that all of her businesses have some kind of give back. Great. So let's see how Miki can make this personal for us.
What is a success that is for you and not me? Or me and not you? It is a fractured success at best, a stained perch where fear of being the next one to fall is a constant companion.
The first time I went to India, I was 11 years old. And I was able to see like true poverty for the first time. And I'll never forget the moment where I was in a train station in India, and there was this kid who had like elephantitis on his feet, and he was like by himself, and he was like dragging his feet, like begging for money for food. And I remember and I was like, I asked my parents like, where's his parents? And he didn't have any parents. He was like just a kid by himself with elephantitis on his feet, just abandoned, begging for food by himself. And I was just like, I remember I was like, what? I don't know how would I live without like someone taking care of me. Like, how lucky are we? And that was a moment. I don't know, I'm crying. You know, that could have been me. Like, that could have been me. And, you know, my dad came to this country from India with $5 in his pocket. That could have been me.
So, Nikki, Alex and I were in Brooklyn with Mickey when we shot that. I was sitting behind a camera that allowed me to see through the camera to her, so she's looking directly in my eyes. And when she said that, I teared up. I edited this film for 2 years, and every time I watch that clip, I can't help but get tearing up. I know it. I know exactly every single word she says. But when she cries, I immediately feel the humanity of what she's saying. Stories make things personal for us. And as filmmakers, what we're looking for is what's true and what's beautiful. If we can discover something that's true and beautiful and express that, then that shows up not here, but over there. And the last thing that we want to talk just a little bit about is this time of transition. How do we move ourselves from a broken society to one that provides for human flourishing? It's the one question we should all be asking ourselves almost every day. How do we move from where we are to flourishing? And for us as filmmakers, and our next project is called The Future of Humanity, we are working on this dearly. We are looking for the stories that connect us personally to our future. How do we begin to take it personally? Not like a bunch of facts and data and figures, but how do we find the stories that make the future important to us? And we'll leave you guys with that.
Thank you. So, Chico Tillmon, I met you last year at Twin, and we had a chance to talk for about 5 minutes. You told me your story, and it stuck with me the entire year. I thought about it time and again. As we think about sort of the journey that we've been on, talking about how people use story, from creating new experiences to operating at a local level to thinking about the global, what I wanted to end up with you on is bringing it down to a real personal level and how story both transformed your life and how you're using it to transform other people.
First of all, I'm humbled by this opportunity to speak before everyone. I think when you think about my life, it could be summed up in maybe 3 words. Hope, resiliency, and opportunity. I grew up in Chicago on the west side, in the Austin area. The Austin area is the poorest area in Chicago. It's the most violent, has the highest rate of unemployment, homicides. Everything that's troubling and systemic and all the socioeconomic problems that exist in Chicago reside in the Austin area. I did pretty good in school, but just being in the social norms, I picked up good habits and bad habits. I learned some great things and some things not so great. After I graduated from high school, I went to the Air National Guard, did all right in there. Still couldn't really make it because I had a large family, secondary family. And I got involved in the community things, drugs and everything. I was in a situation where I was told either to cooperate and tell on everybody in the community or go to prison. I chose the latter. I was sentenced to 240 months in federal prison for not being an informant. I did 16 years, 3 months in prison. During that time in prison, I had an epiphany. I said I didn't want my life to be like that. I went through a lot of traumatic experiences in prison, and I realized that I wanted more for my life, but I didn't want to come back. So when I got out of prison, I began working with an organization called Cure Violence, and I began helping individuals who are in the same situation I was in. But I realized to be impactful, not only to the people that's in my community, but to the people I left behind in prison, I had to reach for excellence. So I went back to school. I went back first to Northeastern Illinois University. I ended up graduating #1 summa cum laude. 13 months afterward, I graduated from Northeastern Illinois University with a master's degree in inner city studies, and I graduated with a 4.0. After finishing my degree at Northeastern Illinois University, I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, and as I stand before you today, I'm a PhD candidate in criminology law. I went to school full-time, taking sometimes 6 classes at a time, but also I worked 2 jobs because I had to show people, not only people in my community, but people who I left behind in prison, that it's possibility and greatness. But I had to be honest with them. Is it hard? Hell yeah, it's hard as hell. But being great is hard. Nothing is gonna come easy. So I expect difficulty to confront me when I desire greatness. But I continue to climb. And people often ask me, why are you getting a PhD? Because I had to prove a point to everyone behind me that you can reach the impossible. Because everyone thought it was impossible for somebody from Austin, the Austin community in Chicago, a community where most people end up in prison or dead, to reach the highest level of education and to be an authority on criminology. Now I'm sought after all throughout the country about situations dealing with imprisonment, reentry, dealing with nonprofit organizations. Also, in order to really be a staple in the community, I began to work with other nonprofit organizations. I started off as an outreach worker, went to a program manager, then to a senior program manager, and then ended up as the executive director of youth safety and violence prevention of all the YMCAs in Chicago. I feel the weight of everyone that's incarcerated. I stay relevant. I continue to go into the communities because they need to be able to touch and feel and see someone who's been through the same things they're going through and who has made it out. And to be able to have conversations. I know a lot of people were infatuated with Obama when he had the audacity of hope, but his story was quite different from people who grew up in impoverished neighborhoods. And we really couldn't relate to his journey because what? He went to Harvard. I'm just saying that's not our reality. So they needed to see somebody who went through the same struggles that they went through and who chose to make a difference and who continues to come back day after day to pull other people up. Now, the reason why my story is so inspiring is because even though it's a representation or symbolizes individuals in the African American community that's impoverished, it also connects to yours. It allows you to realize whatever state you're in right now, you can turn it around, you can get up, you can keep going, you can make a difference. Thank you.
So that's a view of storytelling told in different ways and how it's being used in different ways. And to go back to that opening video, Carl Sagan from A Pale Blue Dot, we were hunters and gatherers. The frontier was all around. We were bounded only by the land and the sea and the sky. And that open road still softly calls. And Rob, I thought the poem, I don't know where you are, but the poem you had written, in the line you said, wander where you will, you have mythical powers. The mythical power is the story within each of us because it connects us, it transforms us, and it transforms others. So it's a very powerful idea. Thank you for to the panel, for all of you, for sharing your stories. Thank you for coming to the late session. We have one special guest. For those of you who were at Twin last year, we had an amazing moment where we had Marshall Davis Jones, who came and did an amazing wrap-up with this incredible talent. I've never seen anything like this before. We're going to bring him out. He's here, and he's going to wrap up the day for us in his own unique and amazing way. Thanks.
You can choose. One story, but you can choose. I consider the Pillars of Hercules. It comes with two stories. One, he pulled both pillars together to keep the monsters from leaving the Atlantic and coming into the Mediterranean. Two, he pushed these pillars apart so that the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean could meet. The same story of these pillars, but you can choose. The stories that we tell, cautionary tales of loss or tall, tantamount mountains of triumph. These are the stories that we spread like seeds in faith. We go and we reach back, remembering the future, projecting out into the screen from our brains, out into our eyes. We can choose to pull back from both ends of the spectrum. These are the stories that we tell and the reason that we spread them, because we know that we can go find wisdom, dig it out from behind us to go and open the road in front of us. We are creating a story world. We can choose. We can choose to build this bridge between one side and the next. We can figure out how we can keep our motion moving. We can choose these pillars of ours. Vision. Vision, being able to see what is unseen. Vision, what if it is that our eyelids are both pillars of Hercules, whether we are closing them tight to keep the beast out or we are opening them wide so that our vision between what we have seen in the back of our minds can go reach out into the ocean of possibility. We can choose. These are the stories that we tell. The ones that we weave. Cautionary tales of lost, triumphant mountains of triumph. We are able to choose. So we tell what we can so that it can connect us. We tell what we can so that we can figure out the deeper meaning of our respect for what it means to be human, how we intersect no matter what race, color, gender, purpose. We find that our eyes give us our purpose. We propose what we see. Our brains propose to us what we can see, and that is the vision that we can possibly create. We are here to manage our imagination. We can choose. In a blink, we can make a decision that puts us inside of a cage, but we can decide at the end of that reign that we are going to release something that is not rage, but we will find ourselves on a brand new world stage, knowing that we can tell a different story and give someone else a new narrative, a new lease on life. We can choose because these pillars are hard to hold. These pillars are hard to push. But it is the tension between this side of the spectrum and this side of the spectrum that makes all the difference. Whether we are doing life personal or for business, we can choose. We can choose. These are the stories that we tell. Our cautionary tales of loss, our tall, tantamount mountains of triumph. It is the reservoir of the things we have known as we walk and search deep into the unknown. And it may be a one way because there's no way back, but that is okay because that's what we are here for. We are here with an insurance policy against the future. We create an insurance policy against the future, whether we want less risk or more risk. We both need both sides. They say we can't, they say we must, but they fight because they must, and they fight because they can, because if they can, and they can choose. Because everything that we are and everything that we can become is based so deeply on what we believe. But history is not slipped into. History is not fallen for. Our history is made with these pillars that we hold, with the strength and the might that is us. It is what we make. So let us make believe. Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall. A couple quick notes. Tomorrow, be here, in here at 8:30. Talk about a downer, right? Be in here at 8:30. What I didn't do with any of my friends is set them up. They spoke for themselves. Chris Gebhardt has worked with the very best filmmakers in the world, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, long list. Chris Wink, Blue Man Group, that story he told about how there was something in the air and things moved and changed. Hegel said philosophy is time and words. Michael and Alex, they've spoken with hundreds of people about their mission and purpose and about what moves them, about them to imagine the future. Chico Tillmon, wow. Thanks to Peter Bryant for introducing him to us a couple years ago, and we are committed to his mission and purpose and friendship. And Richard Owen Geer. He didn't really underscore it so much, a little bit, but the stories that he was talking about are created by community members, often in communities that are quite challenged. It's not just specific communities that have shootings, that have had long-term challenges, it's our entire community now that is fracturing, that is lacking in trust, that is lacking in cohesion, that is lacking in a bedrock. And what you saw was just a bit of what he and his group, with absolutely no resources, have just continued to push up the hill every day. In conclusion, I just want to say a thanks to everyone who presented this evening. And I'd also like to thank each of you. This year has been an extraordinary year for Twin Global. We've been blessed by the opportunity to be in this place, to be together for these days. And it's a modest gesture, but I would like to offer on behalf of Twin Global to a charity of Chico Tillmon's choice, and also to Story Bridge for sure. Richard Owen Geer is one of those people who would then take the money and give it to somebody else. What an idiot. I would like to offer on behalf of Twin Global $2,500 to each of them for their efforts. And I encourage each of you to consider. That's all. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.